Before we begin, I was given a key for Action Hero through Keymailer in exchange for coverage. Please keep that in mind while watching this video. Cheers. So Action Hero was something of a pleasant surprise. It makes absolutely no attempt to hide its biggest inspiration, in this case Superhot VR. The action moves only when you do. If you've played that, and at this point if you have a VR headset and haven't, I'd be shocked, then you know what to expect here. Taking on the role of a budding action film star, you meet a seemingly faceless director whose disembodied voice leads you through a set of increasingly difficult action sequences, scene by scene, act by act, film by film. In the same vein as Superhot VR, if you fail a scene, you restart the act you're on. Nail each scene to complete each act, and nail each act to complete the film. 4 acts to a film, 5 films to complete. Your high score for each film is saved, and hidden collectibles encourage you to replay each film. Each film is a pastiche of an existing action film trope, the first film being an Indiana Jones type spoof, the second a typical heist movie, the third a send-up of kung fu movies, the fourth a direct nod to the Matrix trilogy, oh yeah, it's a Matrix quadrilogy now, and the fifth, a mixture with a somewhat Korean revenge film vibe. Each movie type is brought to life with colourful, stylized visuals which look quite stunning on the Quest 3, with only the occasional noticeable slowdown. At the beginning of the game, you get to choose your director's voice out of A or B. In the reverse of current video game logic, voice A is female and voice B is male. I guess voice type A is different to body type A. I chose voice B, courtesy of Michael Northagen. He wasn't on my radar before, but he sure is now. All the gravelly goodness of a washed-up film director, though a little condescending at times. Don't sleep on this actor. I see some impressive work from them in the future, and hey, anybody who lent their voice to a defunct land video is okay in my book.
Including a meeting with the Sea Lord Poseidon.
With Action Hero, fast travel games have created something that is quite enjoyable, giving you the feeling that you're like John Wick. If I'd actually watched a John Wick film or knew anything about the movies other than that Keanu is in them, the copy here suggests that I lean into the feeling of being the main character in an epic action movie. I can't quite do that, for reasons we'll address in a sec, but first, what Action Hero does right. First off, the accessibility features. Relaxation options allow you to tweak the difficulty in Action Hero to suit your playstyle. You can increase the available ammo for each weapon, give yourself plot armor to withstand hits from enemies, reduce the speed of enemy projectiles, and various vignette and screen shake settings. Secondly, like I said, this is one absolutely beautiful game. The art style may be a little plain for some folks, but considering this is Quest 2 compatible, some lines have to be drawn. What texture work is here is incredibly nicely done, and each film has its own distinct look and feel. Thirdly, the sound design is pretty stellar. Sound effects are punchy, and there's feedback for just about every action you do. The background music in each scene sends up the leitmotifs and instruments you'd expect in whatever movie trope it's mocking. As I've already said, the director's voice is fun, if not a little irritating. You can stick them on mute though if you prefer. Okay, the negatives. I'd like to keep this somewhat brief, because Action Hero is kind of fun, and I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy. You know what, sometimes you gotta say how it is. Unfortunately, as a game that wears its inspiration on its sleeves, Action Hero borrows both the best and worst parts of Superhot VR. When the solution to a scene isn't entirely clear, failing over and over again ends up being frustrating, due to the way an act resets if you fail a scene. For example, in the second film, the one that parodies heist movies, an elevator scene has you presented with 3 raptors bounding toward your elevator. I tried dodging them, I tried punching them, nothing seems to work. In the end, I failed enough times that the game awarded me the Golden Pistol of Shame, with unlimited ammo, just to get me through that scene. Also in the second film, the lasers in certain sequences seem impossible to dodge at first, and getting hit by a single one sends you back to the start of the act, which is just plain irritating. Now, on the one hand, being given a Golden Pistol of Shame is something of a godsend in the game for particularly egregious scenes, but what I would have rather had is an option to simply reset the scene I'm on, rather than getting sent back to the start of the act, especially when that scene, giving me grief, is near the end of the act. And in the case of the lasers, a Golden Pistol ain't gonna do shit. So a simple toggle to restart from the scene you're on when you fail would not only be a welcome change, but would further help to differentiate Action Hero from the game it so brazenly copies from. Similarly to Superhot VR, the throwing feels off to me in VR games, and this is no exception. with the shuriken and kunai always seeming to miss their mark. I've spoken to other people who play VR games, and they agree with me that the throwing seems off in Superhot, and unfortunately, that's true here too. On occasion, I can strike a foe with a thrown pistol and feel utterly gangster, but other times it just bounces to one side and I feel pretty pathetic. The exact opposite of the power trip I'm supposed to feel here. A little bit of auto-aim on throwing, just a little bit, would vastly improve the game. It's like every time Action Hero does something that makes me feel like John McClane, there's always a seemingly undodgeable trap or laser or room full of exploding drones that takes me out of the game completely and just leaves me frustrated and wishing the game would just do better in that regard. A tweak as simple as being able to retry from the scene you're on would vastly improve the game, as it would all but remove the pain of being sent back to the beginning of the act and being forced to start again. I will cautiously recommend Action Hero to fans of Superhot VR, or players who are looking for a VR action game with variable difficulty settings that will force them to think creatively to solve each scene. A few further tweaks to the difficulty would turn that cautious recommendation into an easy one. At $20 or £15.99, it's pricey for the shorter length, but the included Director's Cut mode essentially adds a remixed set of 5 films to play through, changing up the weapons, enemies, and set pieces in a way that I can only describe as pulling a George Lucas to these films and adding CGI everywhere. Action Hero was released on December 12th, 2024 and is available on the MetaQuest store for Quest 2, 3, 3S, and Pro. Once again, thank you Fast Travel Games and Keymailer for the opportunity to cover Action Hero. Until next time, if we live that long.